Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Power Parsha Pearls. And tonight we're going to look at one very famous, but still nevertheless rather curious law. Why is it famous? Because Rabbi Akiva told us it's the most fundamental principle of the Torah. In this week's portion, we are told, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, you shall love your fellow as yourself. And every Jew, young and old alike, know that famous statement. Rabbi Akiva, quoted by Rashi, tells us it is the single most fundamental mitzvah of the Torah. That is a point which Hillel thereafter reiterates, albeit in different words, which every Jew and non-Jew alike is familiar with when he says, what is hateful to you, do not do unto others. Actually, it's a fundamental mistake when people say, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. That's not actually what he said. He simply said, what is hateful to you, do not do unto others. Getting to the point, the question is a simple one. Why is loving your fellow as yourself the most fundamental principle of the Torah? What does it mean to love your fellow? And what is the added emphasis of as yourself? Well, let's first consider what is the opening of every Jewish conversation. Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom. Imagine I meet you and I begin, good morning, and you reply, morning good. Isn't that, after all, how we communicate? On the surface, it seems cordial, but beneath, something else might be going on. The moment someone says to you, Shalom Aleichem, your instinctive reaction is, no, you got it all wrong. It's the other way around. Aleichem Shalom. One of my favorite stories, personal stories that I have shared countless times, is how a number of years ago, I was on a plane with my wife. We were returning, actually, from a Mill Hill Shoal Community Solidarity trip to Israel, right after the Second Lebanon War. And this elderly woman was sitting next to my wife, Honey, and myself. And she's part of this group of 70 senior citizens from JAX, a senior citizens group in the UK, who had also come to Israel. And she told me which community she comes from, how wonderful her rabbi is. And then eventually I said to her, do you know the rabbi of the Mill Hill Synagogue? Of course, my shul. She said, yes, Shachet. I don't like him. My wife smiles and asks sweetly, why not? She goes, oh, he's very controversial. I read his column regularly. I've heard his words sometimes quoted in pay. I don't like his views at all. Not my kind of rabbi. She looks at me, sees me smiling, and says, I'm sorry if you have anything to do with him, but I don't like him. Later, she's standing with some friends at the back of the El Al flight who clearly did identify me, that other couple, as I walked past with my wife. And the same lady stops us dead in our tracks. What's your name? Like, now she thinks to ask. My wife smiles and says, I'm Chani, realizing what's about to go down, and she beats a hasty retreat. I said, I'm Yitzchak. She says, yeah, what's your surname? I said, Shachet. And she says, and so you are. Are you the rabbi? So, trying to make light of an otherwise embarrassing situation and hoping she'll take it in good humor, I say, well, let's just say I'm very, very closely related to him. And she says, oh, good, as long as you're not him, because I really don't like him. Do you know, it's very good therapy to sometimes forget yourself, drop the image, and let other people tell you like it is. But here's the most amazing thing. We got along so well throughout this flight, this lady and I. She was grateful. I helped her put her sweater in the overhead compartment. I helped her take it back down. I helped her with the remote control, taking it out, putting back, even sharing a laugh or two. And it occurred to me thereafter, it's amazing how people are so quick to jump to conclusions and form preconceived ideas, judging, passing verdict without ever really experiencing matters firsthand. For the record, I'm not suggesting she's wrong, but aren't we to one degree or another guilty of the same, quick to pass judgment on other people without really looking beneath the surface? Is there hope for society as a whole, or for Jewish people in particular, if we just write off the next person, judging them, being so quick to criticize, pouncing without looking beneath at the inherent goodness that exists within? If there is one thing that the terrible conflict in Israel has brought to the fore, not that we didn't know it before, it's the way we Jewish people are essentially connected at the core. It's not like we are Americans who are also Jewish and Canadians who are also Jewish and British who are also Jewish. We are first and foremost Jewish. And then, based on our geographical locations, we're either British Jews or American Jews or Canadian Jews, etc. And the relevance of this is that when something happens in any one place, we feel it. We feel it someplace else, like a family member, however far away. If something happens to my brother or sister on the other side of the world, it doesn't lessen the impact. It doesn't diminish the tragedy. Is there such a people so universally bound? Every time a rocket is fired, we feel the pain wherever we are. Every time a soldier is killed, we shed a tear around the world, wherever we are. When a young soldier was killed and the mother appealed for a minion to turn up at the funeral, 30,000 people turned out. How many of them even knew he existed beforehand? Do such people exist anywhere? But there's the point. Historically, our strength is in our unity. One nation is our strength. Scattered and divided is our Achilles heel. The cardinal sin of the first temple was idolatry. We were exiled for 70 years. It's a serious sin. It's a capital crime, no less, idolatry. But when committing idolatry, you're offending God, and frankly, he can get over it. He did 70 years later. The second temple was destroyed on account of baseless hatred, infighting amongst our own. And we've been in exile ever since. We can all relate to that distinction as parents. If somebody offends you, you can get past it. But imagine someone says to you, I really like you, as your kids I can't stand. Now, dare I say this, you don't have to go to statistics for this. Anyone who looks honestly enough into their hearts knows it to be true. Prejudice is one of the principal constituents of the human personality. Almost everybody harbors some sort of prejudice. I don't like him because he's too right-wing, because she's too left-wing, because he's Hasidic, because she's not Hasidic, because he's Sephardic, because she's Ashkenazic, because their nose is too long, because of their views. Take a good, hard look into your heart and then look at the world around you, what it is, what it could be, and then ask yourself, are you part of the problem, or how you can work on being part of the solution? And the real problem begins when people take it to extremes. And I'll say this for the record, the tendency to turn human judgments into divine commands, as some people do, makes religion one of the most dangerous forces in the world. There are religious Jews who see someone secular or acting secularly and immediately write them off as not good enough, not deserving to carry the label Jew, not one of mine. Or conversely, there are those less religiously inclined who immediately form preconceived ideas and conclusions of others who might look or behave different to themselves. I've seen it on both sides. I've seen the so-called Haredi, ultra-frum, shun the Chiloni, ultra-secular. And I've seen those perhaps less religious sometimes look and mock at those who they perceive as being the Meshuggah from. And that's dangerous stuff. The mere fact that we have these labels, Haredi, Chiloni, from, not from, in and of itself, demonstrates how dangerous judgmental religion can be. The reality is God initially created only one man. Many animals, lots of planets, loads of forestry, but at the beginning, only one man. Yes, he decompartmentalized into many men and many women, but we all trace our roots back to one collective heart that beats strong and that is inextricably linked with our Father in heaven. It's just that over the years, there are layers that mask over this heart, such that it seems that there are many different hearts. And the reality is, we have to remember that inasmuch as we are two Jews with three opinions, we always have to maintain that one heart. And this should be said, therefore, loud and clear. We don't believe in labels. Labels are for clothing. There's no such a thing as Orthodox Jews or Reformed Jews or conservative Jews. All are simply Jews, unqualified in any sense. Either you're Jewish or you're not. You could be more or less observant, but ultimately all are born of a Jewish mother and are therefore and remain Jews. Now, to be sure, respecting one another doesn't mean to respect and legitimize ideas or philosophies which are unacceptable to our own. It means to respect and recognize the humanity and identity of our fellow beings. Let's not confuse ideas with persons. A person remains my fellow being, a creature of God like myself, even if their philosophy is not acceptable to me. And that's what people find difficult. They can't make the distinction. And I don't get why people can't separate the issues from the personalities. You don't like the way I think, I don't agree with your approach, but I can still accept you and you can still accept me as individuals, as an extension of the divine like yourself. Our faces may not be the same, our thinking may not be the same, but our essence, our hearts, they are the same. So when our sages tell us also in this week's portion, do not judge someone until you are in their place. What does it mean in their place? Simply put, it means in the same circumstance as the other individual. You don't know their circumstances. They may not be different than yours, so don't judge another until you are in their place. But at a much deeper level, at a more basic level at the same time, it says that even if you are in the same set of given circumstances, you don't know the makeup of that other person. And unless you are of identical disposition, how can one soul, if you will, possibly judge another? Our missions in life are not the same. Why is someone failing when I am not failing? Because that's his area of vulnerability. And I'm not vulnerable in that same specific area. And I have my area of vulnerability where somebody else is not and is stronger in that particular area. Success is only an achievement for the soul with the challenge, with the vulnerability. There's nothing remarkable about being able to walk, but it is an achievement for a lame person to walk. For somebody who is not crippled, to compare their walking to a man on crutches is not only inappropriate, it's foolish. In other words, we criticize other people because we make a judgmental decision about that person's inability to function in comparison to our ability to function in the same given situation. That's very unfair. It's like expecting a 6-year-old to lift a suitcase because it's not heavy for us as an adult. And again, frankly, that makes no sense. There was a man who spoke with an angel about heaven and hell. The angel says, come, I'll show you hell. They enter a room, a group of people sitting around, a huge pot of stew. Everybody's famished. They're desperate. They're starving. Each one held a spoon that reached the pot, but each spoon had a handle so much longer than their own arm that it could not be used to get the stew into their own mouths. It could only reach down that way, but it couldn't get it back that way. The suffering was terrible. Now the angel said, I'll show you heaven. And they enter another room identical to the first. Pot of stew, group of people, same long-handled spoons, but everybody's happy and self-nourished. And the man says, I don't understand. Why are they happy here when they're miserable in the other room and everything is the same? And the angel smiled. He says, it's simple. True, the spoons are long in both, but in this room, they've learned to feed each other. And herein lies the underlying directive of loving your fellow as yourself. You see, there are people in our lives whom we profess to love. There are others that we talk about liking, and there's a critical difference between the two. Love comes from our sameness. Liking comes from our differences. Loving someone underscores your shared identity. Liking another person emphasizes your distinctiveness from each other. I love you because you and I in a very deep place are one. You and your parents, you and your siblings are connected in a very real way. On the other hand, when I like you, it means that I appreciate your unique personality, your unique character traits, which make you different and sets you apart from me. I like you not because we are one, but because we're different, and your individuality enriches and enhances my own. In every relationship, it's not enough to have love. You also have to have like, because love overlooks differences, and that's great, and that's awesome. But when the differences start to become obvious, the love can dissipate. Hence, what is also needed is like. Like is rooted in the fact that people are different and can thus complement each other. Liking represents the fact that I do not take you for granted. I appreciate your contribution to me, which is not a natural part of my own being. It's not enough to love, you have to like as well. And that distinction between love and like is true concerning the Jewish people as well. Somebody asked the question once, what's the difference between an anti-Semite and a Jew? After all, they both don't like Jews. Ask any anti-Semite, you like Jews? He'll tell you Jews are a horrible people, aggressive occupiers, guilty for the crisis of the Middle East, and of course they run the economy. What about Dr. Goldberg, your cardiologist? He's a mensch. He's different. Mr. Klein, your attorney, straight up guy. Berkowitz, your accountant, most honest I ever met. Now ask a Jew for his opinion on the Jewish people. My brothers, my sisters, my heart melts for them. I love them all. Yeah, what about Levy, who sits next to you in shul? He's a nutnik. And the guy in the row behind, don't get me started on him. He's a real schmendrick. You see, Jews love the Jewish people, but they might have a hard time liking them. The anti-Semite might like particular Jews, but he has no love for our people. Bottom line is, we Jews are one family. We fight like family. We argue like family. We gossip about each other like family, even as we also love each other like family. Even a Jew who is completely different than I am, I still love, because on a deep level, we're truly one. We're united by fate, by history, by destiny. We're also united by the mutual hate shared by others against us. But even as we might love each other as one family, we don't necessarily like, by definition, respect each other. There's love, but is there like? That then is the real meaning behind the command in our portion. We always translate love your fellow as yourself, but really it should be translated as like your fellow as yourself. You love other people, but you don't necessarily like them. But you do like yourself. So learn to love and like others as you do yourself. Because remember, in unity, the you comes before I. And therefore, we should all learn from this principle how to disband with the judgmental and strife and live with gratuitous love and a mutual like and respect for one another. And then, please God, we'll merit that day when the whole world will live in perfect harmony speedily. And I wish you all